Hey, welcome back. Today I want to talk about something that's been blowing up in AI circles the last couple weeks. A genuine David versus Goliath story. Except this time, David might actually be catching up. The question on the table, Kimi K3 versus Claude Fable 5. Who's winning? And I promise you, the real answer is way more interesting than a simple, this one beats that one. Segment 1. The comeback story. Go back about 18 months. There's a Chinese AI startup called Moonshot AI, founded by a guy named Yang Jilin, a Tsinghua grad who'd done research at both Google and Meta. Their product, Kimi, was actually one of the hottest things in Chinese AI back in 2024. Great long context handling, strong search features, real traction, and then DeepSeek happened. Tight beat, like recalling something dramatic. DeepSeek dropped their R1 model in January 2025, and it completely rearranged the pecking order in Chinese AI overnight. Kimi, which had been sitting at number 3 in monthly active users, fell all the way to number 7. That's a brutal fall from grace in an industry that moves this fast. So when I tell you Kimi K3 just launched, understand, this isn't just a new model release. This is Moonshot's comeback play, and it's a big swing. Segment 2. What actually is Kimi K3? Okay, the specs. Kimi K3 clocks in at 2.8 trillion parameters. To put that in perspective, that makes it the largest open-source model ever released, the first one to cross into what people are calling the 3 trillion parameter class. It's built on some genuinely new architecture, something called Kimi Delta Attention, paired with a technique called attention residuals. Without getting too in the weeds, the short version is, it's designed to let information flow more efficiently through really long sequences and really deep models. It's got native image understanding baked in, not bolted on afterward, and a context window of 1 million tokens, meaning it can hold enormous amounts of text or conversation in its memory at once. And here's the kicker. Full open source weights are scheduled to drop by July 27th. Anyone will be able to download this thing and run it themselves, assuming they've got the hardware. Pricing-wise, it's $3 per million input tokens, $15 per million output tokens. That's actually a jump up from Moonshot's earlier, cheaper models. This positions Kimi K3 in the same price range as some mid-tier commercial models from the big US labs. Segment 3. What actually is Claude Fable 5? On the other side of the ring, you've got Claude Fable 5. This is Anthropic's newest flagship, sitting at what they call the Mythos tier, a step above their previous top model, Opus. It's a closed, proprietary system, no published weights, no parameter count, no downloading it and running it on your own machine. You access it through Anthropic's products, or API, full stop. Quick side note, because it's a fun wrinkle in the story, Fable 5's access actually got briefly suspended in mid to late June this year to comply with US export control requirements. That got lifted, and full access was restored on July 1st. So even Anthropic's flagship model has had a bumpy few weeks of its own. So already, before we even get to benchmarks, you can see the philosophical split here. Moonshot is publishing everything. Architecture, technical report, open weights. Anthropic is keeping the hood closed. Segment 4. The benchmarks. What do they actually say all right? This is what everyone wants to know. Let's get into it. Across independent evaluation trackers, things like the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index and the VALS AI Index, Kimi K3 lands remarkably high. Top 3 overall. And on specific tasks, like front-end code generation, it actually takes the #1 spot outright, beating everything else out there. But, and this is the important but, on the overall aggregate intelligence rankings, Kimi K3 sits behind exactly 2 models, Claude Fable 5 and OpenAI's GPT 5.6 Sol. Moonshot themselves have basically confirmed this in public statements, that K3 closes the gap with the top US labs, but doesn't overtake them on overall performance. So here's the clean, unhyped summary. Kimi K3 is the best open-source model ever released. Period. Full stop. No argument. It is not the best model overall. Claude Fable 5 and GPT 5.6 Sol are still a notch above it. Segment 5. Where each model actually wins. Let's break down where each one actually pulls ahead, because who's smarter isn't the only question that matters. Kimi K3's wins. Cost to performance is incredible. Getting this close to the frontier at that price, and being fully open weight on top of that, is a legitimate engineering achievement. It wins outright on front-end and code generation tasks. And it wins massively on transparency, full weights, a public technical report, even contributions back to open source projects like VLLM. Claude Fable 5's wins, it stays on top for general reasoning and overall intelligence. Reviewers have also noted it just feels more polished to actually talk to. It handles ambiguous situations more gracefully. Actually, an interesting quirk reported about Kimi K3 here. It tends to just act on things rather than pause and ask for clarification when a request is ambiguous. That's a known trait of this type of model architecture, but it's exactly the kind of thing that matters if you're deploying it into a real workflow and not just running it through a benchmark test. Segment 6. So, who's actually winning? Here's the answer I actually believe, and it depends entirely on what you're asking. If you're asking which model is smarter on paper, Fable 5 wins. Still ahead on the aggregate benchmarks, still rated higher on day-to-day usability. If you're asking which model is winning the race to make frontier AI accessible to everyone, Kimi K3 wins, no contest. No closed-source lab is putting anything close to this capability level out in the open, with downloadable weights right now. That's genuinely historic. And if you're asking which company is winning strategically, that one's actually close. Moonshot went from 7th place and fading relevance to being mentioned in the same breath as Anthropic and OpenAI in under 2 years. That's an enormous turnaround story, but Anthropic clearly isn't sitting still either. Honestly, I think the real headline isn't Kimi K3 versus Fable 5 at all. It's that the gap between the best open model in the world and the best closed model in the world has basically collapsed. A couple years ago, that gap was enormous. Now we're talking a handful of percentage points on a few benchmarks. That's the story that actually matters here. Segment 7. What to watch next? A few things I'd keep an eye on. First, the July 27th weights release. Right now, K3's numbers are self-reported, so once researchers can actually get their hands on it, we'll know if those numbers hold up. Second, just days after K3 dropped, Alibaba announced their own 2.4 trillion parameter model is coming, so this is clearly the start of a bigger race among Chinese labs, not a one-off. And third, keep watching Anthropic and OpenAI's next moves. Neither of them tends to sit on a lead for long. Outro. So that's where things stand. Kimi K3 didn't dethrone Claude Fable 5, but honestly, it didn't need to. Getting this close to the frontier, in the open, on a fraction of the budget those US labs are working with, that might be the bigger story here than winning a single benchmark chart. Thanks for listening. If you've got thoughts on which one you'd actually reach for, I'd love to hear them. Catch you in the next one.